The sky above Asterline City was not truly a sky. It was a vast hemispherical dome of synthesized atmosphere, a canvas where corporate weather patterns were projected in high definition. Today, the council had scheduled a low-pressure drizzle to encourage citizens to seek shelter in the shopping districts. But up here on the diplomatic spire, the wind felt real enough to cut through skin. Lyra Vey stood on the landing platform, the hem of her silver-weave ceremonial gown snapping around her ankles like a whip. She was tall, even by the standards of her own people, with skin that held the faintest pearlescent shimmer, a biological marker of the high-altitude regions of her homeworld. Here, under the neon glare of Earth's megacity, she felt less like a diplomat and more like a specimen under glass. Giant holographic banners rippled across the skyline, dwarfing the skyscrapers that anchored them. They pulsed with a rhythmic, hypnotic blue light, spelling out the slogan of the day in 10 different languages. Unity through exchange. Unity. It was a soft word for a hard reality. A drone the size of a dragonfly buzzed near her ear, its camera lens dilating like a mechanical pupil. Lyra fought the urge to swat it away. She forced her posture to remain fluid and open, a skill she had drilled for 6 months before boarding the transport ship. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Vey," a voice boomed from the hidden speakers in the platform floor. "The Council extends its warmest embraces." The doors to the reception hall hissed open. A wall of noise hit her instantly. The shutter clicks of 1,000 cameras, the murmur of the elite, and the clinking of crystal flutes. A smiling aide, a young woman with a tablet grafted into her left forearm, stepped forward. Her smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. "Right this way, Ambassador," the aide said. "Mr. Holt is eager to facilitate your introduction." Lyra felt a cold prickle of warning at the base of her skull. Cassian Holt. The name had been in every briefing dossier she had read on the flight over. He was a magnate of industry, a man who owned half the orbital shipyards and 3/4 of the city's water filtration systems. He was not a government official, yet he was the one hosting the welcome. That detail alone should have been a diplomatic insult. But here, money was the only dialect that translated perfectly. She walked into the hall. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ozone. The lighting was golden and warm, designed to flatter human skin tones while making her own pallor look sickly and fragile. "Lyra Vey," a voice cut through the noise. It was smooth, rich, and carefully modulated. Cassian Holt stood at the center of the room, parting the crowd like a ship breaking ice. He was a handsome man in the way a predator is handsome, sleek, groomed, and entirely focused. He wore a suit of midnight blue velvet that absorbed the light, making him look like a void in the center of the room. "Mr. Holt," Lyra said, inclining her head just enough to be polite but not enough to show submission. "I was told I would be meeting with the trade secretary." Cassian stepped into her personal space. He was tall enough to look her in the eye. He took her hand, his grip firm, his skin dry and warm. "The secretary is delayed by a vote, but I assured him I would keep our precious guest entertained. After all, the Unity Bill is my passion project." He turned her toward the wall of cameras. Flashes erupted like localized lightning storms. "Smile, Lyra," Cassian murmured, his voice low enough that the microphones would not catch it. "The galaxy is watching. We want them to see how well we fit together." Lyra stiffened. "We are here to discuss biotech patents and medical shielding, Mr. Holt, not to fit together." Cassian kept smiling for the cameras, waving with his free hand. "Politics is perception, my dear. The council is voting on the emergency aid package for your homeworld in 48 hours. My block controls 30% of those votes. If they see us allied, truly allied, the aid flows. If they see a cold, distant alien who refuses to integrate, well, budgets are tight this quarter. Lyra pulled her hand away, perhaps a fraction too sharply. The cameras devoured the movement. Are you threatening my people with a blockade disguised as bureaucracy? Cassian chuckled, a sound that lacked all humor. He leaned in, his cologne smelling of spices and cold metal. I am offering you a fast track. There is a clause in the treaty, Article 19, Section 4. A unity marriage between a high-ranking alien representative and a human citizen of significant standing grants immediate dual citizenship and bypasses the trade embargoes. It would save your people 5 years of waiting for medical supplies. Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. A marriage. A partnership, Cassian corrected. I need access to your biotech to secure my position on the council. You need shields to stop the radiation storms on your world. We marry, we sign the papers, and we both win. Refuse, and I will make sure your trade application stays in committee until your planet is a dust ball. Lyra looked around the room. The smiles of the guests seemed frozen, synchronized. She focused her alien senses, tuning out the noise and listening to the rhythm of the room. She heard it then. The micro-delays in speech, the faint, high-pitched static hum coming from the overhead chandeliers. It was behavioral suggestion technology. The lights were strobing at a frequency invisible to the human eye but perceptible to her. It was a frequency designed to induce compliance, to make suggestions feel like one's own ideas. They were conditioning her. They were conditioning the room to accept the match. You are drugging the air with light, Lyra whispered, horror rising in her throat. Cassian's eyes narrowed. You are more sensitive than our tests predicted. No matter. The announcement is already scripted. In 10 minutes, the screens will announce our engagement. No, Lyra said. You cannot run. Lyra, you have no transit papers, no currency, and the security detail at the door answers to me. Lyra looked at the heavy Durasteel doors. Then she looked at the service corridor to her left, where a waiter had just emerged with a tray of drinks. She did not hesitate. Lyra moved with a speed that startled the humans around her. She didn't run. She flowed. Ducking under the arm of a startled general and slipping through the gap in the crowd before Cassian could finish his gesture to the guards. She hit the service doors with her shoulder, bursting into the kitchen. Stop her! Cassian's voice roared from the ballroom, losing its polished veneer. Lyra sprinted past startled cooks and bubbling vats of synthetic soup. She saw a loading bay door open to the night air and bolted for it. She leaped off the loading dock, landing in a crouch on the wet pavement of the alleyway below. Rain. It was pouring now, a heavy chemical deluge that slicked the streets and blurred the neon lights into streaks of violent color. She scrambled to her feet, her silver gown instantly soaked, clinging to her legs. She could hear the heavy thud of security boots on the metal stairs behind her. She ran toward the main avenue, her breath hitching in her chest. Asterline City was a canyon of light and noise. Holographic advertisements for neural implants and off-world vacations towered 20 stories high, bathing the street in pink and green. Cars hovered in magnetic lanes, a ceaseless river of metal. She needed a vehicle. A black sedan swerved toward her, but she saw the council insignia on the door and backed away. Cassian would have the grid monitored. She needed something analog, something invisible. A yellow vehicle, battered and hovering slightly askew, drifted toward the curb to drop off a passenger. It was a taxi, an older model with a combustion assist engine that coughed smoke. The passenger, a drunk businessman, stumbled out. Lyra dove into the back seat before the door could slide shut. "Drive," she gasped, slamming the button to close the door. The driver did not jump. He did not turn around. He sat in the front seat, a silhouette against the glare of the dashboard. He wore a faded leather jacket and gloves that looked like they had been patched with duct tape. "Meter starts when the door closes," the driver said. His voice was raspy, tired, and completely unimpressed. "Just drive!" Lyra yelled. Looking out the rear window, 2 security drones were descending from the skyline, their red scanning lasers sweeping the street. The driver tapped the dash screen, which was cracked down the middle. "Destination? Anywhere but here, please." The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes were dark, framed by shadows of exhaustion, but they were sharp. He looked at her silver gown, the water dripping from her hair, and the terror in her eyes. "You are the fanciest fare I have had all week," he said. He shifted the car into gear with a mechanical clunk. "Are you running from love or running from knives?" "Knives," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "Definitely knives." "Knives I can handle," the driver said. "Love costs extra." He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The taxi surged forward, not with the smooth hum of the luxury cars, but with a roar that vibrated through the chassis. Lyra was thrown back against the cracked vinyl seat. "What is your name?" "Jace," he said, spinning the wheel to the left. The taxi drifted around a corner, missing a delivery truck by less than 2 inches. "Jace Kieran." "I am Lyra," she said. "I know," Jace said. "Hard to miss. Your face is on every billboard in the Central District." "They are chasing me," Lyra said, watching the sky. The drones had locked onto them. "Mr. Holt's security." "Cassian Holt?" Jace let out a low whistle. "You aim high, lady, or low, depending on how you look at it." "He is trying to trap me," Lyra said. "Can you lose them?" Jace looked at the side mirror. 3 black interceptor vehicles had joined the drones, weaving through traffic with sirens blaring. "In a straight line? No," Jace said calmly. "This rig tops out at 120. Those interceptors do 200 easy." "Then I am caught," Lyra said, her heart sinking. "I said in a straight line," Jace corrected. "Good thing this city is crooked." He suddenly yanked the wheel hard to the right. The taxi jumped the magnetic curb and dropped onto a lower service lane, sparking against the railing. Lyra screamed, grabbing the handle above the door. Jace's expression didn't change. He drove with a terrifying, relaxed precision. It wasn't just driving, it was choreography. He anticipated the traffic patterns before they happened. He merged into a lane of heavy freight haulers, using a massive container truck as a shield against the drone's line of sight. "Hold on," Jace said. He swerved into a maintenance tunnel marked "Authorized Drones Only." The tunnel was dark, lit only by the strobe of the taxi's headlights. It was a maze of pipes and support beams. "This is a dead end," Lyra shouted, seeing a wall of concrete ahead. "Not for locals," Jace muttered. He hit a switch on the console. The taxi's suspension dropped, scraping the floor, and he drifted the car sideways, sliding perfectly into a hidden freight elevator ramp that was barely wider than the vehicle itself. The taxi shot up the ramp, bursting out onto a sky bridge 3 levels higher. The interceptors were gone, left searching the lower tunnels. Lyra exhaled, her hands shaking. She stared at the back of Jace's head. "You drive, effectively." "I drive like I want to get paid," Jace said, "and dead passengers do not tip." He slowed the car down, merging into the anonymity of the mid-level traffic. "So, Holt wants you back. Why? He wants to marry me, Lyra said. Jace laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Guy usually buys what he wants. Must be annoying to have to ask. He is not asking, Lyra said bitterly. He is engineering it. He is going to claim guardianship over me. He says I am mentally unfit to navigate Earth laws. Jace's eyes flicked to the mirror again. The amusement was gone. The guardianship trap. Classic. Declare the target incompetent. Get emergency power of attorney. Sign the assets over to yourself. It is how he got the waterfront district 3 years ago. I need to stop him, Lyra said. I need a place to think. Somewhere he cannot track. I know a spot, Jace said. Clinic in District 9, off the grid. You look like you need a sedative anyway. Or a drink. I do not drink alcohol, Lyra said. Pity, Jace said. You are in the right city for it. The clinic was located in the back of a noodle shop that smelled of burnt garlic and synth pork. The doctor was a woman with robotic ocular implants who didn't ask questions as long as Jace vouchsafed the visitor. Lyra sat on a rusted examination table, her wet gown pooling around her. She was scrolling frantically through a datapad the doctor had lent her, accessing the public treaty archives. Jace leaned against the door frame, chewing on a toothpick. He looked out of place in the sterile light, too rough, too worn. His jacket had oil stains on the shoulder. His boots were scuffed. But he watched the street outside with the vigilance of a sentry. It is worse than I thought, Lyra said, her voice hollow. Usually is, Jace said. Cassian filed an emergency petition 10 minutes ago. Lyra read from the screen. He claims I suffered a psychotic break due to atmospheric toxicity. He has requested immediate protective custody. A judge is reviewing it now. Once it is signed, I have no legal standing. I become property of the state, and the state appoints him as my warden. You need a countermove, Jace said. Apply for asylum? Takes 6 months, Lyra said. I have 6 hours. She scrolled further, her eyes scanning the dense legal text of the Unity Treaty. There had to be something. The treaty was designed to facilitate integration. It encouraged biological and social merging. Her finger stopped on a paragraph. Article 22, subsection C. In the event of conflicting guardianship claims, a pre-existing legal union with a planetary citizen takes precedence over pending petitions. A spouse has immediate and total power of attorney, superseding all external claims of non-familial guardianship. Lyra read it twice. If I am married, she whispered, Cassian cannot claim me. The husband outranks the petitioner. She looked up at Jace. He was looking at his wrist comp, checking the time. Look, lady, I can drive you to the embassy, but I have got a shift to finish. Rental on the cab is due at midnight. Lyra stood up. She felt a strange, vibrating clarity. It was reckless. It was humiliating. It was the only door open in a burning house. Jace, she said. He looked up. Yeah? I need a husband. Jace blinked. He took the toothpick out of his mouth. Okay. Good luck with that. I need one now, Lyra said, stepping closer. Tonight, before the judge signs that order. She looked at him, really looked at him. He was a nobody, a taxi driver with tired eyes and cheap clothes. He had no political capital, no wealth, no leverage. He was invisible. I will pay you, she said. I have access to accounts off-world. Once the treaty is ratified, I can transfer you, but 50,000 credits, 100,000. Jace stared at her. For a moment, she thought he was going to laugh again. Let me get this straight, Jace said slowly. You want to marry me? To stop Cassian Holt? Yes. I am a cab driver. Lyra, I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat that shakes when the spin cycle hits. My credit score is a tragic novel. That is why it works, Lyra said, her voice gaining strength. Cassian is looking for a political rival. He is looking for another power player. He will never look for you. You are beneath notice, Jace suggested, his voice dry. Safe, Lyra said. You are safe because you are nothing to him. Jace looked at her for a long silence. The neon sign outside the window buzzed, casting a flickering red light over his face. He didn't look like a man tempted by money. He looked like a man calculating the geometry of a crash. No offense, Jace said, but rich women don't propose to poor taxi drivers unless something is on fire. Everything is on fire, Lyra said. To avoid a rich human, I will marry a poor taxi driver, that is the deal. It is a business transaction, nothing more. She held her breath. She didn't realize she had just spoken the sentence that would define the rest of her life on Earth. Jace sighed. He tossed the toothpick into a waste bin. 50,000 credits? 100,000, Lyra said. Keep the money, Jace said. I don't want alien credits that might get flagged. Lyra frowned. Then what do you want? Jace pushed off the doorframe. He walked over to her, his movements loose but controlled. I want autonomy. You don't tell me how to drive. I don't tell you how to diplomat. We read every clause before signing. And if you want out, you say the word, and I sign the divorce papers. No contesting, no drama. I won't trap you. He held out a hand. It was rough, calloused, stained with engine grease. Do we have a deal, Your Highness? Lyra looked at the hand. It was the hand of a worker, a survivor. It was not the manicured hand of Cassian Holt. She reached out and gripped it. We have a deal. The registry tower in District 4 was a monolith of gray concrete, open 24 hours a day for quick divorces and hasty unions. It smelled of stale coffee and regret. It was 3 in the morning. The waiting room was empty except for a cleaning drone mopping the floor. Lyra stood by the counter, shivering slightly. She had dried her dress under the hand dryer in the bathroom, but it still looked ruined. Jace stood beside her, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the ceiling tiles as if counting the water stains. The clerk, a man with a face like crumpled paper, didn't even look up from his screen. Names, the clerk droned. Jace Kieran, Jace said. Lyra Vey, Lyra said. The clerk paused. He looked up, his eyes widening slightly as he saw the alien woman standing next to the guy in the leather jacket. Vey, the clerk asked. Like the ambassador Vey? Just process the form, buddy, Jace said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't a threat, exactly, but the clerk stopped asking questions. Biometrics, the clerk muttered. Lyra placed her hand on the glass panel. A blue light scanned her palm. Jace did the same. The machine whirred, processing the data against the planetary database. Lyra held her breath. If Cassian had already locked the system. Ping. Marriage recorded, the mechanical voice of the kiosk announced. Congratulations, citizens. Unity credits have been applied to your tax accounts. The clerk printed out a flimsy piece of plastic and slid it across the counter. Next. Lyra took the card. It was warm. Lyra Kieran. The name looked absurd. Let's go, Jace said, touching her elbow. Before the press sniffed the data update, they walked out of the tower and onto the rain-slicked steps. The city air felt heavier now, charged with the weight of what they had just done. A screech of tires tore through the night. 3 black SUVs skidded to a halt at the bottom of the stairs. Doors flew open, and men in tactical suits poured out. Cassian Holt stepped out of the lead vehicle. He looked impeccable, even in the rain. but his face was twisted in a rictus of fury. Behind him, a dozen news drones descended from the sky, their lights blindingly bright. The paparazzi had intercepted the police scanner traffic. "Lyra!" Cassian shouted, pointing a finger at her. "Step away from that man. We have a warrant for your protection." Lyra froze. She stood on the top step, the lights blinding her. She felt small, cornered, and ridiculous in her ruined gown. Then she felt a weight on her hand. Jace had laced his fingers through hers. It wasn't a hesitant grip. It was solid, grounding. He stepped forward, placing his body partially in front of hers, shielding her from the glare of the drones and the anger of the billionaire. "She is not going anywhere." "Halt!" Jace called out. His voice was calm, cutting through the rain. "She is with her husband." The cameras zoomed in. The image was broadcast instantly to screens across the city. The beautiful, ethereal alien diplomat, standing in the rain outside a cheap registry office, hand in hand with a scruffy taxi driver who looked at the most powerful man in the city with total indifference. Lyra looked at Jace's profile. He didn't look worried. He didn't look like a man who had just painted a target on his back. He looked like he was exactly where he chose to be. She expected to feel humiliation. That was the price she had agreed to pay. But as Jace squeezed her hand, anchoring her against the chaos, she didn't feel humiliated. She felt a strange, sudden relief. And beneath that, a spark of something else, something dangerous and electric. "Smile. Mrs. Kieran," Jace whispered, "just for her. Confuse the hell out of them." Lyra looked at the cameras, tightened her grip on the taxi driver's hand, and smiled. The apartment smelled of star anise, ginger, and old carpet. It was a sensory assault that Lyra Vey could not filter out, located directly above a 24-hour noodle shop in District 9. The floorboards vibrated with the hum of the industrial ventilation fans below. The air was thick and humid, clinging to her skin like a second layer of clothing. It was nothing like the diplomatic quarters in the spire, which had been silent, cool, and sterile. Lyra stood in the center of the living room, her silver ceremonial travel case looking absurdly sleek against the peeling beige wallpaper. Jace kicked the door shut behind him, engaging 3 separate deadbolts with a practiced rhythm. Click, clack, thud. "Home sweet fortress," Jace muttered, tossing his keys into a ceramic bowl on a wobbly table. "Sorry about the heat. The radiator is stuck on high, and the landlord says he will fix it when the sun burns out." Lyra touched the wall. It was warm. "Do humans normally live in thermal exhaust ports?" "Only the lucky ones," Jace said, moving to the kitchenette. He opened a refrigerator that hummed aggressively. "Water? Or water? I think I have a lemon somewhere, but it might be a biology experiment by now." "Water is fine," Lyra said. She opened her travel case. It hissed softly as the seal broke. She needed to establish a perimeter of cleanliness. The microbial count in this room was likely catastrophic. She pulled out a silver canister the size of a perfume bottle. It was a standard-issue biosanitizer from her homeworld, designed to neutralize harmful pathogens in alien environments. "I am going to sanitize the sleeping area," Lyra announced. "Knock yourself out," Jace called from the kitchen, cracking a tray of ice. "Just don't dissolve the curtains. I lost the deposit on those." Lyra aimed the canister at the faded sofa and depressed the nozzle. She expected a fine, invisible mist. Instead, due to the higher atmospheric density of Earth, the canister erupted with a dense violet fog that expanded instantly, filling the room with the smell of ozone and electric blueberries. "Lyra?" Jace asked, stepping out of the kitchen with a glass of water. The fog rolled over the floor. It seeped under the crack of the door leading to the neighbor's balcony. Suddenly, A screech echoed from outside, followed by frantic pounding on the wall. "My iguana!" a voice yelled through the thin plaster. "Why is my iguana glowing?" Jace froze. He looked at Lyra, who was standing amidst the swirling violet cloud, looking horrified. "It is a harmless bioluminescent side effect," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "It marks the bacteria, and it wears off in 3 weeks." Jace stared at her for a second, his face completely blank. Then he snorted. The snort turned into a chuckle, and the chuckle broke into a full chest-heaving laugh. He leaned against the counter, shaking his head, ice cubes rattling in the glass. 3 weeks? Jace wheezed. "Mrs. Kieran, you just turned the neighbor's lizard into a disco ball." Lyra stiffened. "It is not funny. I have disrupted the local ecosystem." "You have improved it," Jace said, wiping his eyes. He walked over, the laughter softening into a smirk that made his tired face look 5 years younger. He handed her the water. "Relax. Mr. Henderson's lizard has survived worse. Welcome home." Lyra? The domestic comedy, however, was a brief island in a sea of sharks. The moment they stepped outside the next morning, the reality of their marriage hit them with the force of a physical blow. The paparazzi were waiting. They swarmed the sidewalk like mechanized locusts. Drones buzzed overhead, their rotors kicking up trash from the gutters. Microphones were shoved into Lyra's face, nearly clipping her nose. "Ambassador, is it true you are pregnant with a human hybrid? Did you marry for a visa? Does the taxi driver know about the orbital treaties?" Lyra shrank back, overwhelmed by the noise and the aggression. Humans were creative in their cruelty. They did not just ask questions, they accused. Jace moved instantly, he did not shove. But he created space with his shoulders, a hard barrier between Lyra and the mob. He grabbed a microphone that was too close and pushed it gently but firmly down. "Back off," Jace said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a gravelly edge that cut through the shouting. "She is not pregnant. She is not a spy. She is a woman trying to get breakfast. Anyone touches her, and you will be eating that camera lens." "Mr. Kieran," a reporter shouted. "What do you bring to this union? You are a driver with less than 2,000 credits in the bank." Jace put an arm around Lyra, pulling her into the side of his body. "I bring excellent parallel parking skills and a tolerance for lizard-related accidents. Now move." He guided her into the taxi, slamming the door on the screaming faces. As they pulled away, Lyra watched the crowd recede. "They hate me," she said quietly. "They think I am using you." "They don't think," Jace said, checking the mirrors. "They react. Cassian is feeding them the narrative. Look at the news feeds." He tapped the cracked dash screen. A holographic news ticker scrolled past. Holt Industries questions legality of alien unions. Shipments to Sector 7 delayed pending review. "Sector 7, Lyra said, her blood running cold. "That is my homeworld's primary medical doc. He is holding the shipments hostage." "He is squeezing you," Jace said. "He wants you to panic. He wants you to run back to him and beg for a divorce so he can save the day." Lyra looked at Jace's profile. He was calm. Annoyingly calm. "We need to eat," he said, pulling the taxi into a grimy service station in District 4. "I know a place. Best dumplings in the grim dark future." Inside the diner, which was filled with dock workers and off-duty security guards, Lyra noticed something strange. When Jace walked in, the noise level dropped. A group of men in the corner, men with scars and cybernetic oculars that suggested a history of violence, looked up. They didn't sneer. They nodded. It was a subtle, respectful tilt of the head. Jace nodded back, barely perceptible. When the bill came, it was 40 credits. Lyra reached for her data pad, but her accounts were frozen. Jace, I cannot. Jace didn't blink. He pulled a roll of physical currency from his pocket, a thick wad of bills that no taxi driver should be carrying casually. He peeled off a 50 and dropped it on the table. Keep the change, he told the server. Back in the taxi, Lyra watched him. You carry a lot of cash for a poor man. Tips were good last night, Jace said, starting the engine. And those men, Lyra pressed, they knew you. I drive a lot of people, Lyra. You hear things. You help people get home. They remember. Lyra looked around the interior of the cab. She had been too panicked to notice the details before. Now, she saw the anomalies. There was a switch under the dashboard that was not factory standard. The glove box was locked with a biometric scanner, not a key. And under the passenger seat, there was a sealed black case made of military-grade polymer. What is in the case, Jace? Lunch, Jace said. It has a biolock, Lyra pointed out. It is a very good sandwich. Jace replied, I don't like sharing. He was lying, but he was lying with such ease that Lyra felt a chill. She realized then that she had married a stranger who navigated the underworld with the same ease she navigated the stars. Hang on, Jace said suddenly, his tone shifting from playful to steel. We have a tale. Lyra looked back. 2 gray sedans were weaving through traffic behind them. They had no markings, but they moved with aggressive coordination. Cassian? Lyra asked. Cassian's payroll, Jace corrected. Private security contractors, they're the cheap kind. They get paid by the capture. Jace slammed his foot down. The taxi surged, the engine roaring with a power that definitely did not belong in a municipal vehicle. They are closing in, Lyra said, watching the distance meter on the dash. They are going to box us in at the intersection. Watch the lights, Jace said. As they approached the massive intersection, the traffic lights were solid red. Cross-traffic was a wall of speeding metal. The gray sedans accelerated, preparing to ram the taxi from behind. Jace tapped a sequence on the underside of the steering wheel. Instantly, the streetlights above them flickered. The traffic signals for the cross-traffic turned red, and the light for their lane turned green. Not just green, it stayed green. The wall of traffic halted, tires screeching. Jace shot through the gap like a bullet. The sedans behind them were forced to slam on their brakes to avoid a collision with a fuel tanker. How did you do that? Lyra gasped. The city grid is encrypted. Must be a glitch, Jace said. City infrastructure is falling apart and everyone knows that. He drifted the car around a corner, tires smoking. They were in the industrial district now, a maze of factories and sky bridges. They are still coming, Jace said, glancing at a monitor that had slid out from the dashboard. It showed a heat map of the surrounding blocks. They have air support, drones. Jace, pull over, Lyra said, gripping the door handle. If they catch us, they will arrest you for evasion. I will surrender. I cannot let you go to prison. Nobody is going to prison, Jace said. And nobody is surrendering. He spun the wheel hard left, driving straight toward a concrete wall. Jace, Lyra screamed. At the last second, a concealed service door in the wall slid open. Jace drove through into a pitch-black tunnel, the door slamming shut behind them. Maintenance access, Jace said, his voice tight. Hold on. This part gets bumpy. The taxi sped through the dark, illuminated only by the dashboard lights. Jace was navigating by memory, taking sharp turns that Lyra couldn't see. They are tracking the car's thermal signature, Jace muttered. We need to mask it. He hit the brakes. Skidding to a halt on a metal grating. Below them, through the grate, Lyra could see a massive cargo tram moving on a magnetic rail, carrying containers of ore. It was moving at 100 kilometers an hour. "We are going to jump," Jace said. "We are in a car," Lyra shouted. "So cars do not jump." "This one does." Jace reversed the taxi, revving the engine until it whined like a jet turbine. Then he dropped the gear and floored it. The taxi shot forward, hit a small service ramp, and launched into the air. For a second, they were weightless. Then they crashed down onto the flatbed of the moving tram with a bone-jarring slam. Sparks flew as the metal chassis scraped against the ore container. "Down!" Jace yelled. He hit a button, and the taxi's windows tinted to total opacity. He killed the engine. Silence. Just the roar of the wind outside and the rhythmic thrum of the tram. Lyra was hyperventilating. The adrenaline was too much. Her alien physiology reacted to the extreme stress. Her vision blurred, and the air around her began to shimmer. "Lyra?" Jace turned to her. "I cannot. It is too much." Lyra gasped. The air around her ignited with light. It wasn't fire. It was memory. A sphere of translucent, holographic distortion expanded from her body, filling the interior of the taxi. Suddenly, the last minute of reality replayed around them like a ghost film. Jace saw himself driving. He saw the ramp. He saw the jump. He saw Lyra's terrified face. The images were three-dimensional, made of light, looping and flickering in the air. It was a defense reflex, a biological distress beacon meant to record the moments before death for her hive-kin to find. Jace didn't flinch. He didn't look confused. He stared at the shimmering ghosts with recognition. "Memory light," he whispered. "I haven't seen this since the siege of Antares." The words cut through Lyra's panic. She snapped her head toward him. The field of light collapsed, vanishing instantly. "What did you say?" Lyra asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Jace looked at her. His mask slipped for a fraction of a second. His eyes were not the eyes of a taxi driver. They were the eyes of a soldier who had seen off-world combat. "I said, it is bright," Jace lied, recovering his composure. "Whatever that was, keep it down. The drones scan for energy spikes." Lyra stared at him. He knew what it was. He had named it the Siege of Antares. That was a classified conflict on the Outer Rim, fought 10 years ago between mercenaries and the Council. "Who are you?" Lyra whispered. "I am your husband," Jace said, looking away. "And right now, I am your ride." They ditched the taxi in an abandoned transit station in the lower sectors. It was a cavernous, rusting cathedral of old trains and dripping water. The air was cold here, far from the artificial heating of the upper city. Lyra sat on a concrete bench, shivering. Her adrenaline had crashed, leaving her exhausted. Her thin diplomatic clothes offered no protection against the damp chill. Jace walked over. He took off his leather jacket. It was heavy, smelling of rain and engine oil. He draped it over her shoulders. He didn't walk away immediately. He stood there, his hands hovering for a moment as he adjusted the collar, making sure she was covered. Lyra looked up at him. His face was bruised from where he had hit the steering wheel during the landing. There was grease on his cheek. "Why are you doing this?" Lyra asked. "For money. You have money? For excitement? You have plenty." Jace sat down next to her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "I don't like bullies, Lyra, and Cassian Holt is the biggest bully in the yard." "You risked your life," Lyra said. "Calculated risk." Jace shrugged. "You knew about the memory light." Lyra pressed. Jace sighed. He looked at his boots. "I used to work logistics for a supply corps. Off-world. You see things. Alien tech. Weird biology. It is not a mystery. It was a lie, but a better one." Lyra pulled the jacket tighter. It was warm. It held his body heat. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Jace said. "We are stuck here until the heat dies down." They sat in silence for a long time. The distance between them felt charged. Lyra had spent her life in diplomatic circles where touch was formal. A handshake, a ceremonial embrace, nothing like this. This was messy, it was raw. She watched his hands. They were resting on his knees. Strong hands, capable. Hands that had steered them out of the sky. Without thinking, she leaned slightly toward him. The cold was biting, but that wasn't the only reason. She wanted to feel that solidity again. Jace turned his head. Their faces were inches apart. Lyra's breath hitched. She saw the flecks of gray in his eyes. She saw the pulse in his neck. The urge to close the gap, to seek comfort in the most primal way, was overwhelming. She leaned in closer. Jace didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. He held her gaze, his expression unreadable, intense. "Lyra," he whispered. "Yes?" "We don't owe anyone a performance," he said softly. "Not even ourselves." Lyra froze. The words were a bucket of ice water. He was reminding her of the contract, the deal, to avoid a rich human. She pulled back, her face flushing with heat. I apologize. The cold, it affects my judgment." "It is okay," Jace said. His voice was gentle, lacking any mockery. "Get some rest. I will take first watch." He stood up and walked to the edge of the platform, turning his back to her. But Lyra saw his hand clench into a fist at his side, tight and trembling, before he forced it to relax. The next few days became a blur of strategy and sitcoms. They couldn't go back to the apartment yet, so they moved between safe houses, shabby motel rooms and back rooms of shops owned by people who called Jace boss until he glared them into silence. Lyra learned that the conspiracy went deeper than a marriage license. "Cassian's voting bloc is pushing a secret annex," Lyra explained, pointing at a holographic map she had projected from her wrist comp onto a motel wall. "They want protective custody of alien biotech. They claim it is too dangerous for us to manage alone." "It is a racket," Jace said, cleaning a spark plug with a rag. "He creates the threat, delayed shipments, instability, and then sells the protection. He wants your shield tech. If he gets it, he can bypass the Council's energy grid and sell power directly to the colonies. He will be a kingmaker." "My advisors are telling me to submit," Lyra said angrily. "They say the blockage is choking our economy. They are compromised." "Then we investigate," Jace said. "We get proof, but we have to keep playing the happy couple. If they think the marriage is fake, they annul it, and Cassian grabs you." "I do not know how to be a happy couple with a human," Lyra admitted. "It is easy," Jace said. "Watch this." He turned on the motel television. It was playing a rerun of an ancient sitcom from the 20th century. A husband and wife were arguing about a dishwasher. "Lesson 1, Jace said. Roll your eyes when I talk. Humans love that. It shows affection." "That seems counterproductive," Lyra noted. "Lesson 2, Jace said. Hand-holding. It has to look natural. You hold my hand like it is a dead fish. I am respecting your anatomy." "Squeeze it," Jace said, holding out his hand. "Like you are afraid I will run away, or like you are afraid I won't." Lyra took his hand. She squeezed. Too hard. Jace winced. "That is the I am crushing your bones grip. Soften it. Interlace the fingers." She tried again. Her cool, smooth skin against his rough palm. Her fingers slid between his. It fit. It fit terrifyingly well. They sat there on the edge of the bed, hands locked, staring at the TV. "Is this correct?" Lyra asked, her voice quiet. "Yeah," Jace said, his voice husky. "That is convincing." He didn't let go. Neither did she. They practiced their cover story. They argued about toothpaste brands. They bickered about directions, but beneath the performance, the reality was shifting. When they walked down the street to get food, Lyra found herself leaning into him not for the cameras, but because the world was loud and he was the quiet center of it. When a drone flew too close, her body moved to shield him before she even thought about it. It was becoming a habit, a dangerous one. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. They were in a safe house in District 12. Jace was hacking a radio frequency, trying to intercept Cassian's communications. Lyra was reading a book, her feet tucked under her on the couch. The radio static cleared. A voice cut through. Cassian Holt. He was on a broadcast, but it wasn't a public news channel. It was a private, encrypted stream to his investors. Jace had cracked the key. The alien woman is a temporary inconvenience. Cassian's voice sneered. Let her play house with the driver. It is charming. But the moment the annex is signed, I will annul the union on grounds of fraud. I will strip the driver of his license, maybe have him detained for trafficking, and then I will collect what is owed. She thinks she found a loophole. She just found a longer leash. The room went silent. Lyra felt a surge of nausea. He is going to destroy you, she whispered. Jace, you have to leave. Annul it now. Save yourself. She looked at Jace. He was staring at the radio. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't cracking a joke. His jaw was set so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. His eyes were cold, glacier cold. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't fear. It was the look of a man who had just decided to burn a city to the ground. He thinks you are a leash, Jace said, his voice terrifyingly soft. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the neon skyline of Asterline City. He placed a hand on the glass, his silhouette framed by the smog and the lights. He doesn't know who is holding the chain, Jace whispered. He turned to Lyra. Pack your bag, Mrs. Kieran, Jace said. We are done hiding. If he wants a show, let's give him a finale. Lyra looked at him, shivering. The taxi driver was gone. The hidden boss had arrived. The council barge, the sovereign zenith, did not float so much as it presided over the city. It was a massive, obsidian-hulled slab of anti-gravity luxury, suspended 3,000 feet above the smog layer of Asterline City. Up here, the air was scrubbed clean of ozone and desperation, replaced by the scent of synthetic jasmine and chilled champagne. Lyra Vey stepped onto the deck, and the conversation died. She wore a dress that was not made of fabric, but of a ferrofluid weave from her homeworld's deep-sea foundries. It clung to her like a second skin of mercury, shimmering with a liquid iridescence that shifted from silver to violet depending on her heartbeat. It was armor masquerading as fashion. It was a statement that she was not human, not weak, and not hiding. Beside her, Jace Kieran adjusted his cuffs. He wore a suit that was aggressively plain, charcoal gray, off the rack, with a cut that was just slightly too boxy for the current fashion. He should have looked like a servant. He should have looked like the taxi driver he claimed to be. Instead, as he scanned the room, the high society crowd parted for him. It was a subtle phenomenon. A senator stepped back to check his drink. A CEO turned to speak to a colleague. They made a path for Jace without realizing they were doing it. Yet you walk like you own the floorboards, Lyra murmured, keeping her head high and her smile frozen. I walk like I know where the fire exits are, Jace replied, his voice low. Keep moving. If we stop, we are targets. If we move, we are guests. They are staring, Lyra said. They are hungry, Jace corrected. Look at their eyes. They don't see a person. They see a patent. They see the biotech that made that dress. Cassian has promised them a slice of you, and they are already counting the profits. The ballroom was a cavern of crystal and light. Floating musicians drifted on magnetic discs, playing instruments that hummed rather than sang. Security drones, sleek and white like pearls, hovered at eye level. They were not just cameras, they were biometric scanners, reading pulse rates, pupil dilation, and pheromones to detect aggression or unauthorized anxiety. Lyra felt the hum of the suggestion tech in the lighting. It was stronger here than in the reception hall on her first day. It pushed against her mind, a warm, fuzzy pressure urging her to agree, to acquiesce, to unify. There, Jace said, nodding toward a cluster of velvet sofas near the bar. Councilman Vane, the one sweating through his silk collar. He is Cassian's whip for the vote. He looks nervous, Lyra observed. He looks like a man waiting for a payoff, Jace said. Let's see if we can catch the transaction. Before they could move, a shadow fell over them. Lyra, a voice purred. And the husband. Cassian Holt stood before them, holding a glass of amber liquid that cost more than Jace's taxi. He looked immaculate, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. He ignored Jace entirely, focusing his predatory gaze on Lyra. You look breathtaking, Cassian said. It is a tragedy to see such elegance wasted on a man who likely had to check his tire pressure before arriving. Mr. Kieran checked the pressure perfectly, Lyra said, her voice cool. We arrived safely, which is more than I can say for the guests you transport. Cassian, I hear your safety ratings are dropping. Cassian's smile tightened at the edges. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. Let us skip the banter. Lyra, I am offering you an exit ramp. Annul this farce of a marriage tonight. Cite coercion. Tell the press he tricked you, confused you with local laws. And if I do? Lyra asked. Then you are free, Cassian said. I will grant you the trade routes. I will ensure your family gets their medicine. You will be a hero who survived a predator. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that chilled her blood. But if you stay with him, I will destroy him. I have lawyers drafting the papers now. We will paint him as a trafficker, a predator who took advantage of a displaced alien refugee. He will rot in a black site prison. Lyra, and you will watch. The anger flared in Lyra's chest, hot and violent. It was not the diplomatic frustration she was used to. It was a primal, protective rage. She opened her mouth to scream at him, to break the veneer of this polite society. Then she felt it. Jace's hand settled on the small of her back. It wasn't a grab. It was a steady, warm pressure. It was grounding. Through the liquid metal of her dress, she could feel the heat of his palm, radiating a calm that she did not possess. It was possessive, yes, but protective. It claimed her not as property, but as a partner. Mr. Holt, Jace said. His voice was pleasant, conversational, and utterly terrifying. I think you have had too much to drink. Why don't you go count your votes before you misplace them? Cassian looked at Jace then. Really looked at him. For a second, the billionaire looked confused, as if he was trying to place a face from a nightmare he couldn't quite remember. Do I know you, driver? Cassian asked, narrowing his eyes. I have one of those faces, Jace said. Generic, forgettable. Just the way I like it. Come on, Lyra. The air in here is getting stale. Jace guided her away, his hand never leaving her back. The touch sent a rush through Lyra that had nothing to do with fear. It was electric. confusing, and undeniably real. "He is going to frame you," Lyra whispered as they moved toward the terrace. "He is going to try," Jace said. "Focus. Vane is moving." They followed the councilman to a secluded alcove near the edge of the barge, where the windshield hummed softly. Vane was meeting with a young woman, Cassian's personal aide. They stood 20 feet away, blocked by a decorative ice sculpture. "I cannot hear them," Lyra said. "The wind dampens the sound." "We don't need to hear," Jace said. "We need to see. Use the light." Lyra hesitated. Using her ability in public was dangerous, but the drones were currently scanning the dance floor. She closed her eyes for a microsecond, focusing her mental energy. When she opened them, the air around the alcove rippled. Memory light. It was a localized distortion, a shimmering replay of the last 60 seconds. To anyone else, it might look like a heat haze or a glitch in their ocular implants. But to Lyra and Jace, it was high-definition evidence. In the ghostly replay, they saw the aide hand Vane a slim, black data slate. Vane tapped it, and a holographic projection flared up. Not medical grants, but a transfer of deed for a mining colony on the moon. A bribe worth billions. "Got you," Jace whispered. "He is buying the vote with lunar real estate." "We need that slate," Lyra said. "We will get it," Jace said. "But first we need to—" "Ambassador Vey." The voice came from behind them. It was sharp, clipped, and familiar. Lyra turned. Standing there was Vorian, the head of her own delegation. He was an elder of her species, tall and gray-skinned, wearing the robes of the High Council. He looked sad. "Vorian," Lyra said, relief washing over her. "Thank the stars. We have evidence of corruption. Cassian is bribing the—" "I am sorry, Lyra," Vorian said. He held up a silver rod, a diplomatic override key. "The pressure is too great. The blockade has starved 3 of our cities. Cassian promised immediate relief if you were contained." "What are you doing?" Lyra backed away, bumping into Jace. "Initiating Protocol 7, Vorian said. Recall and restrain." He pressed the stud on the rod. Lyra's collar, the ornate silver choker she wore as part of her diplomatic dress, clamped tight. A shock of neural inhibitor energy slammed into her spine. She gasped, her knees buckling. The world grayed out. The inhibitor didn't knock her out, but it severed her motor control. She was paralyzed, a prisoner in her own body. "She is non-compliant property of the delegation," Vorian announced loudly. "Security, I require assistance for a medical extraction." 2 massive security guards materialized from the crowd, reaching for Lyra. "Don't touch her," Jace said. His voice had changed. The gravel was gone. It was pure steel now. "Step aside, driver," the lead guard grunted, reaching for his stun baton. "This is diplomatic immunity business." Jace moved. It happened so fast that Lyra, even in her paralyzed state, could barely track it. Jace didn't swing a fist. He stepped inside the guard's reach, tapped a pressure point on the man's neck, and guided the collapsing body into the second guard. In the same motion, Jace pulled a small, disc-shaped device from his pocket and flicked it into the air. Zzzt! A pulse of electromagnetic distortion rippled out. The nearby security drones dropped out of the air, clattering onto the marble floor. The lights in the ballroom flickered and died, plunging the gala into chaos. Screams erupted. The rich and powerful scrambled in the dark. Jace scooped Lyra up in his arms. He didn't struggle under her weight. He lifted her as if she were made of paper. "Hold on," he whispered against her ear. He didn't run for the elevators. He ran for the edge of the barge. "Jace!" Lyra tried to scream, but her voice was a slur. "The drop," Trust me, Jace said. He vaulted over the railing, plummeting into the open air 3,000 feet above the city. Lyra's mind screamed. They were falling. They were dead. Then Jace fired a grapple line from a device hidden in his sleeve. The monofilament wire hissed, catching a maintenance catwalk on the underside of the barge. The line snapped taut, swinging them in a violent, stomach-churning arc. They slammed onto the metal grating of the catwalk, wind tearing at them. The city was a sprawling ocean of neon beneath their feet. Jace didn't pause. He cut the line, kicked open a service hatch, and carried her into the bowels of the barge's engineering deck. He moved with the efficiency of a machine, checking corners, disabling sensors with a handheld jammer, and navigating the labyrinth of pipes without hesitation. He wasn't a taxi driver. He was a weapon. An hour later, they were back on the ground, in the gritty safety of the taxi depot in District 9. Jace had used a localized EMP to fry the inhibitor collar, freeing Lyra from the paralysis. She sat on the hood of a dismantled cab, rubbing her bruised neck. The depot was dark, smelling of oil and rain. Jace was pacing. He had shed his suit jacket. His white shirt was stained with grease and sweat. The sleeves rolled up to reveal scars on his forearms that Lyra had never noticed before. "Vorian betrayed me," Lyra said, her voice hollow. "My own people." "Desperation makes people stupid," Jace said, checking the magazine of a kinetic pistol he had pulled from a lockbox. Cassian squeezed them until they broke. Lyra looked at the gun, then she looked at Jace. "You took out 2 armed guards in 3 seconds, Lyra said. "You disabled military-grade drones with a pocket jammer. You swung off a floating barge on a grapple line." Jace didn't look at her. He racked the slide of the pistol. "Adrenaline is a hell of a drug." "Stop it," Lyra said. She slid off the hood, her liquid metal dress shimmering in the dim light. "Stop lying to me. You drive like a soldier. You plan like a strategist. You fight like a ghost. Who are you, Jace?" Jace stopped pacing. He placed the gun on the workbench. He leaned against the wall, shadows hiding his eyes. "I am a guy who owes this city a debt," he said quietly. "A debt I can never pay off. The taxi. Driving. It is how I balance the ledger. I help people get where they need to go because once, a long time ago, I couldn't." "That is a riddle," Lyra said, stepping closer. "I need the truth. I married you. I trusted you with my life tonight. Do not give me riddles." "The truth is dangerous, Lyra," Jace said. "The truth gets people killed. My other life, I buried it. I refuse to dig it up unless I have to." "You had to tonight," Lyra said. "And now Cassian knows," Jace said while he saw me move. He recognized the training, even if he didn't recognize the face. The clock just sped up. Lyra felt a surge of betrayal, not because he was dangerous, but because he was still holding back. She had given him everything, her name, her safety, her reputation. "I feel like I stepped off a cliff," Lyra whispered. "And I do not know who caught me." Jace looked up. His eyes were tortured. "I caught you, Lyra. That is all that matters." "Is it?" Lyra asked. Her voice trembled. "I married you to survive. Jace, I told myself it was a transaction, a business deal. To avoid a rich human. I married a poor taxi driver." She took a breath, the confession clawing its way out of her throat. "But I am scared," she said, "because I am no longer sure it was only survival. When you touched me tonight, when you held me, I didn't want you to let go." The silence in the garage was deafening. The only sound was the distant hum of the city and the dripping of a leaky pipe. Jace stared at her. His restraint, usually a fortress, cracked. A hunger raw and terrifying flashed across his face. He pushed off the wall and crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, almost touching her cheek. Lyra leaned into the ghost of his touch, her heart hammering against her ribs. He was close enough that she could smell the ozone and the rain on him. He was going to kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted him to claim the connection that the world kept trying to force into a contract. Jace's hand trembled. Then, he pulled it back. He stepped away, turning his back to her, his breathing ragged. "If we cross that line," Jace rasped, his voice rough with suppressed emotion, "it is because you choose it, not because they cornered you, not because of adrenaline, not because you are scared." He turned back to face her, his eyes burning. "I won't be another cage, Lyra. I won't take what isn't freely given." Lyra stared at him, tears pricking her eyes, in a world of men who wanted to own her. This man, this dangerous, lying, beautiful man, was the only one who insisted she own herself. "We have work to do," Jace said, his voice returning to a forced calm. "The slate. We didn't get the slate, but we saw the data." Lyra wiped her eyes, nodding. She forced her diplomat's mind to take over. "The grants. They weren't just bribes. I saw the headers on the files Vane was holding. Project Panopticon." "Panopticon," Jace repeated. "Total surveillance. They are using the marriage clauses to gain guardianship over alien representatives," Lyra realized, the pieces clicking together. "Once they have guardianship, they have access to our biometric data, our genetic memory, and they are using that data to power the suggestion tech." Jace finished. "The lights, the behavioral modification, it runs on memory crystals, your people's technology. If this gets out," Lyra said, "humans will not blame Cassian. They will blame us. They will say we are trying to mind control the city. It will be a pretext for war. A war Cassian will sell weapons for," Jace said. "It is a perfect loop, a coup disguised as self-defense." Suddenly, the depot's main screen flickered to life. The emergency broadcast signal overrode the standby mode. Cassian's face filled the screen. He was sitting in a studio, looking grave and concerned. "Citizens of Asterline," Cassian began. "Tonight, a tragedy occurred at the Unity Gala. Our security forces have uncovered a terror cell operating within our city." An image appeared on the screen next to Cassian. It was a photo of Jace, a grainy surveillance shot from the gala, showing him taking down the guards. "This man," Cassian said, "known as Jace Kieran, is a deep-cover operative for a radical xenophobic militia. We have evidence that he seduced Ambassador Vey, manipulating her unstable state to gain access to alien weaponry. He is the mastermind behind the recent tech thefts. He is dangerous, armed, and holding the ambassador hostage." Lyra stared at the screen. "He framed you. He made you the villain." "Smart," Jace said, watching his own face on the news. "He took my skills and gave them a narrative that scares people. The irony is almost funny." "Funny?" Lyra cried. "He just authorized a kill order on you." "Yeah," Jace said. "That part is less funny." A deep, reverberating thrum shook the floor of the depot. Dust fell from the ceiling. "They are here," Jace said. "That was a breach charge on the outer blast doors." "We are trapped," Lyra said. "The depot has one exit." "One exit on the map," Jace corrected. He ran to a control panel on the far wall, an old rusted fuse box that looked like junk. He punched in a code. The floor of the depot groaned. The concrete slab in the center of the garage, the one Lyra assumed was a mechanic's pit, began to split open. Gears ground against stone. The floor retracted, revealing a dark chasm beneath. Rising from the darkness on a hydraulic lift was a ship. It was not a taxi. It was a sleek, matte black interceptor stripped of markings, with engines that glowed with a feral blue light. It looked fast, lethal, and expensive. It was a piece of military hardware that shouldn't exist in a civilian sector. The blast doors behind them buckled. Sparks showered down as laser cutters sliced through the metal. "Get in!" Jace yelled, the engines of the ship whining to life, drowning out the alarms. Lyra stood frozen for a second, staring at the spacecraft rising from the junk. She looked at the man in the grease-stained shirt who held the door open for her. "Poor taxi driver," she whispered, stunned. She ran for the ship. Jace jumped in after her, sealing the hatch just as the depot doors exploded inward. Cassian's stormtroopers poured in, firing blindly into the smoke, but they were too late. The interceptor's thrusters fired, incinerating the back wall of the garage. The ship shot out into the night, screaming toward the upper atmosphere, leaving the city and the lie far behind. The interceptor cut through the atmosphere of the dust moon like a black needle stitching the sky. Outside the cockpit glass, the universe was a violent haze of ochre and rust. This was Oxtrad, a celestial body that technically did not exist on any civilian star chart. A graveyard of ancient alien architecture half buried in iron sand, constantly battered by electromagnetic storms that glowed with a bruising purple light. Lyra Vey gripped the restraints of the co-pilot seat. Her heart was still hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, echoing the chaos of their escape from Asterline City. She looked over at Jace. He was piloting the ship with the same relaxed, almost bored precision he used to drive the taxi. His hands moved over the holographic flight controls, making micro-adjustments to compensate for the turbulence. He didn't look like a man who had just blown up a depot and fled a planetary blockade. He looked like he was commuting. "We are coming in hot," Jace said, his voice calm over the comms. "The atmospheric ionization is messing with the sensors. I have to land manually." "Where are we?" Lyra asked, looking down at the swirling clouds of dust below. "This place looks uninhabitable." "It is," Jace said, "if you don't know where the airlocks are." "To the Council, this is a hazard zone. To people like me, it is a waypoint." The ship banked sharply, diving into a canyon of jagged rock. Below them, massive spires of twisted metal rose from the sand, humming with a faint rhythmic light. These were the ruins of the precursors, technology so old that even Lyra's people considered it myth. The air here vibrated with static electricity, making the hair on Lyra's arms stand up. Jace leveled the ship out and guided it toward a seemingly solid wall of rock. At the last second, a massive camouflage field shimmered and dissolved, revealing a cavernous hangar bay cut directly into the cliff face. The ship touched down on the landing pad with a heavy hydraulic hiss. Steam vented from the thrusters, mingling with the red dust. "Welcome to the junkyard," Jace said, unbuckling his harness. "End of the line." Lyra unclipped her restraints and followed him to the cargo ramp. As the ramp lowered, the smell hit her, ozone, sulfur, and the metallic tang of recycled air. They walked down into the hangar. It was a hive of activity. Mechanics were welding armor plating onto retrofitted mining skiffs. Hackers sat in suspended chairs, surrounded by walls of monitors displaying code that scrolled too fast for the human eye to track. Crates of supplies, food, medicine, weapons were stacked to the ceiling. Lyra expected the rough, chaotic atmosphere of a criminal den. She expected shouting, posturing, and danger. Instead, as Jace's boots hit the deck, the hangar went silent. A mechanic near the ramp stopped his grinder. He looked up, saw Jace, and immediately straightened his posture. He didn't wave, he didn't smile. He placed a fist over his heart, a sharp, disciplined salute, and bowed his head. "Sir," the mechanic said. Jace gave a single, curt nod. "At ease. Miller, check the thermal coils on the interceptor. She is running hot." "On it, boss," Miller said, moving instantly to obey. They walked deeper into the facility. Every person they passed stopped what they were doing to acknowledge Jace. It wasn't the fear Lyra had seen in the eyes of Cassian's employees. It was something heavier. It was reverence. It was the kind of loyalty that could not be bought, only earned through blood. A woman with a cybernetic arm approached them, holding a data pad. She wore a tactical vest and carried herself like a veteran. "The perimeter is secure," the woman said, falling into step beside Jace without breaking stride. "We picked up the council decree on the subnet. They have branded you a terrorist. Bounty is 50 million. "Standard rate," Jace said, not breaking his stride. "Any chatter on the Shadow Network?" "The syndicates are holding back," the woman reported. "They know better than to take a contract on you. But Cassian is hiring off-world mercenaries. We have doubled the watch." "Good work, Kale," Jace said. "Prepare the command suite and get some food sent up. Real food, not rations." "Yes, Commander," Kyle said, peeling away to execute the order. "Commander, boss, sir." Lyra stopped walking. They were in a central corridor lined with reinforced blast doors. The hum of the facility was low and steady, the heartbeat of a well-oiled machine. "Jace," Lyra said. He stopped and turned to face her. "Yeah?" "They are not treating you like a taxi driver," Lyra said. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed in the steel hallway. "They are treating you like a king." Jace sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "They treat me like the guy who pays the electric bill." "Lyra, don't read into it." "Do not lie to me," Lyra said, her voice rising. "I know what authority looks like. I have spent my life in courts and palaces. That woman called you commander. The mechanic called you boss. You are not just connected to this place. You run it." Jace looked at her for a long moment. Then, he dropped the act. His shoulders squared, and the slouch of the tired driver vanished. The look in his eyes sharpened into the cold, calculating intelligence she had seen on the barge. "I am the hidden boss," Jace said. The truth hung in the air like smoke. This network, it protects the people the council wants to grind into paste. The refugees, the undocumented, the people Cassian Holt uses for spare parts. I keep the city from collapsing under its own corruption. Lyra stared at him. The image of the man she thought she knew, the broke, cynical driver with the cheap gloves, shattered. In his place stood a man who commanded armies from the shadows. "You own the city," Lyra whispered, "or the part of it that matters." "I serve it," Jace corrected. "You manipulated me," Lyra said, the shock turning into a hot, bright anger. "From the beginning, the taxi, the poor driver act, it was all a costume. You saw a desperate alien woman running from a tycoon, and you thought, what? That I would be a good cover story? I thought you were a civilian in trouble," Jace said, stepping toward her. "I picked you up because that is what I do. I help people. The marriage. That was your idea, Lyra." "But you agreed," Lyra accused. "You played the part. You let me believe I was hiring a nobody. You let me believe I was saving you with my credits, while you were sitting on an empire. If I had told you the truth, would you have trusted me?" Jace asked. "If I told you I was the head of a shadow insurgency, would you have got in the car, or would you have run back to the council?" "I would have had a choice," Lyra shouted. "You stole my choice. Jace, just like Cassian. You just used a different kind of cage." The accusation hit Jace hard. She saw him flinch, his jaw tightening. "I am not Cassian," Jace said, his voice low and dangerous. "I chose the taxi life to stay invisible, to watch for threats like him without being seen. I didn't expect to marry the target I was meant to protect. I didn't plan for you. Lyra, you happened." "I am not a happening," Lyra said, backing away. "I am a person, and I am tired of men playing chess with my life." She turned and walked toward the airlock door at the end of the corridor. "Lyra, wait," Jace called out. "You cannot go out there. The storms are peaking. The ruins amplify psionic energy. It is dangerous for your physiology." "I would rather deal with a storm than another liar," Lyra said. She hit the release button. The heavy door hissed open, revealing the swirling red dust and the howling wind of the moon's surface. She stepped out, the door sealing behind her. The storm was not just wind and sand. It was a living thing. The air outside screamed with electromagnetic fury. Violet lightning arced between the twisted spires of the ancient ruins, grounding itself in the iron sand with deafening cracks. Lyra stumbled through the dunes, her ceremonial dress now torn and stained, whipping around her legs. She didn't know where she was going, she just needed space. She needed to be away from the suffocating weight of Jace's deception. The ruins hummed. It was a physical sensation, a vibration that rattled her teeth and pressed against her mind. Memory light. Jace had said these ruins amplified it. He was right. Lyra could feel the latent memories of the place, ghosts of ancient inhabitants, echoes of old wars, pressing in on her consciousness. It was dizzying. Her vision blurred, the red sand shifting into phantom shapes. She reached a canyon of black obsidian, seeking shelter from the wind. The walls here were etched with glowing glyphs that pulsed in time with the lightning. She leaned against the cold rock, gasping for breath. "Stupid," she whispered to herself. "Stupid, arrogant Lyra. You thought you could outsmart a planet." A sound cut through the wind, not the howl of the storm, but the mechanical whine of a propulsion drive. Lyra looked up. 3 hover skiffs descended from the cliffs above, circling her like vultures. They were rusted, covered in spikes and trophies, scavengers. Tech hunters who prowled the ruins looking for ancient artifacts to sell on the black market. The lead skiff landed 10 meters away. A man jumped out. He wore a patchwork suit of enviro armor and held a shock spear that crackled with blue energy. 2 others followed, circling to flank her. "Look at this," the leader rasped, his voice amplified by a modulator. "A shiny little bird, far from the nest. That dress is made of ferrofluid, worth a fortune." "Stay back," Lyra warned. She tried to summon her diplomatic authority, but here, in the dust, it meant nothing. "And the jewelry," one of the flankers said, eyeing the silver cuffs on her wrists. "Alien tech. I bet it screams when you peel it off." Lyra backed up, but her heel hit the canyon wall. She was trapped. She closed her eyes, trying to trigger a memory light defense, but the ambient energy of the ruins was too chaotic. It scrambled her focus. The light flared wildly around her, blinding and useless. The leader lunged, thrusting the spear. Lyra dodged, the energy tip singeing her shoulder. She fell into the sand, scrambling back. "Grab her," the leader ordered. The 2 flankers moved in. Then the air split open. A single gunshot echoed through the canyon, a sharp, thunderous crack that silenced the wind for a heartbeat. The leader's shock spear exploded in his hands, shattered by a kinetic round fired from 300 meters away. He screamed, dropping the weapon. Jace Kieran slid down the canyon wall, riding the loose shale like a landslide. He didn't look like a boss now. He looked like an executioner. He held a long-barreled rifle in one hand and a combat knife in the other. He hit the canyon floor running, Jace! Lyra cried out. One of the scavengers turned to engage him, drawing a serrated blade. Jace didn't slow down. He ducked under the swing, swept the man's legs, and delivered a precise, brutal kick to the helmet that knocked the scavenger unconscious before he hit the ground. The leader scrambled for a sidearm. Jace dropped the rifle, closed the distance, and pinned the man against the obsidian wall with a forearm to the throat. "You are poaching on my territory," Jace growled. His voice was terrifyingly calm. The scavenger's eyes went wide behind his goggles. "We didn't know. We saw the energy spike. We didn't know she was yours." "She is not mine," Jace said, tightening his grip. "She is her own, and you made a mistake trying to touch her." He threw the man into the sand. "Leave, before I change my mind about the body bags." The scavengers didn't hesitate. They dragged their unconscious comrade to the skiffs and fled, engines screaming as they vanished into the dust. Jace stood there for a moment, watching them go, his chest heaving. Then he turned to Lyra. He moved toward her quickly, then stopped 5 feet away. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. He raised his hands, but he didn't touch her. He let them hover in the air, trembling slightly, waiting. "Are you hurt?" Jace asked. His voice was rough, stripped of all command. "Lyra, look at me. Did they hurt you?" Lyra looked at his hands. They were open, palms up, offering aid, but asking for permission. Cassian would have grabbed her. Cassian would have owned the moment, claimed the rescue, and demanded gratitude. Jace was waiting for her to choose him. The anger in Lyra's chest didn't vanish, but it cooled, replaced by a sudden, piercing clarity. This was the difference. Cassian's power was ownership. Jace's power was responsibility. It was heavy, reluctant, and real. "My shoulder," Lyra whispered. "Just a burn." "May I?" Jace asked. "Yes." Jace gently touched her shoulder, inspecting the singed fabric. He pulled a med patch from his belt and applied it. The pain vanished instantly, replaced by a cool numbness. "I am sorry," Jace said, not looking at the wound, but into her eyes. "I am sorry I lied. I am sorry I didn't tell you, but I am not sorry I came for you." Lyra looked at him, the dust in his hair, the fierce protectiveness in his posture. "You are a terrible taxi driver," she said softly. Jace let out a breath that sounded like a laugh breaking. "I have had complaints." The storm intensified, the lightning turning the sky into a strobe light of violent purple. They couldn't make it back to the hangar. "There is a shelter nearby," Jace said, helping Lyra up. "Old excavation site. It is shielded." They found the shelter, a small, domed structure half buried in the sand. Inside, it was cramped and dim, lit only by the bioluminescent moss growing in the cracks of the walls. The wind outside roared like a dying beast, but inside, the silence was heavy and intimate. Jace sat on a crate near the entrance, checking his weapon. Lyra sat on a sleeping mat across from him. "This place," Lyra said, looking at the glowing glyphs on the walls. "The energy here, it is pure memory." "That is why the scavengers come," Jace said. "These crystals, they don't just store data, they store truth. You can't hack them. You can't edit them. Whatever is recorded here is absolute." Lyra's eyes widened. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip, the one she had salvaged from her wrist comp during the escape. It contained the encrypted logs of her own sensory data from the last month. "Jace," she said, "if the ruins amplify memory light, can they project what I saw? Can they make it visible to everyone?" "Yeah," Jace said, "if the focus is strong enough, and why?" "Cassian's bribes," Lyra said. "The meeting on the barge, I saw it. It is in my memory, but a court can dismiss testimony." They cannot dismiss a living holograph projected by precursor tech. You want to turn your memory into a weapon, Jace realized. I want to show them the truth, Lyra said. She stood up and walked to the center of the room, where a large crystal cluster grew from the floor. She placed her hand on it. Help me, she said. I need an anchor. The energy is too chaotic. Jace moved to her side. He didn't hesitate this time. He placed his hand over hers on the crystal. Focus, he whispered. Lyra closed her eyes. She thought of the barge. She thought of Cassian's smug smile. She thought of the data slate passing hands. The room exploded with light, but it wasn't just light. It was sound. It was presence. Suddenly, Cassian Holt was standing in the shelter with them, a 10-foot-tall construct of shimmering light. His voice boomed, clear and undeniable. The alien woman is a temporary inconvenience. I will collect what is owed. The projection shifted. Councilman Vane accepting the bribe. The headers of the project, Panopticon files, the betrayal of Vorian, and it was all there. Perfect, irrefutable. The light faded, leaving Lyra breathless. She stumbled, and Jace caught her. This time, he didn't let go. They stood there in the dim light, the ghost voices fading into the hum of the storm. Jace's arms were around her, holding her upright. Lyra could feel his heart beating against her chest, fast, hard. She looked up at him. The adrenaline of the fight, the power of the memory, the closeness of the small room, it was all colliding. We have him, Jace whispered. With this, we can bury him. We have to go back, Lyra said. To the city. I know, Jace said. But not yet. The storm has to pass. He looked at her, his gaze dropping to her lips, then back up to her eyes. The hunger she had seen in the garage was back, but now it was stripped of the fear. Lyra, he said, his voice rough. You were right. About the cage. I have spent my whole life building walls to keep people out, to keep the city safe. I thought if I let anyone in, I would get weak. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his thumb grazing her cheekbone. But being with you, playing the husband, it didn't make me weak. It was the only time I felt like I was actually living. I am terrified, Lyra confessed, her voice trembling. I have spent my life running from people who want to control me, and now I am terrified that if I am free, it will just mean being lonely. You are not alone, Jace said fiercely. Not anymore. Then don't be a cage, Lyra whispered. Be a choice. She reached up and pulled him down to her. They crossed the line. It wasn't a desperate collision. It was a surrender. As Jace kissed her, the last of Lyra's defenses crumbled. It was a claiming, yes. But it was mutual. It was the messy, undeniable realization that they were two people who had been running in circles only to crash into the one thing that could stop them. The storm raged outside, battering the walls of the shelter, but inside, in the glow of the alien moss, there was only the sound of whispered names and the feeling of hands clinging to each other as if the rest of the universe had ceased to matter. By morning, the storm had broken. The sky was a bruised purple, but the wind had died down to a whisper. Lyra stood at the entrance of the shelter, watching the sun rise over the jagged ruins. She felt different, stronger. The fear that had defined her time on Earth was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. Jace walked up behind her. He handed her a canteen of water. The ship is prepped, he said. Miller installed the memory core from the ruins into the broadcast array. When we hit the city, we can project that evidence onto every screen from the spire to the slums. We are going to start a riot, Lyra said, taking the water. We are going to start a revolution, Jace corrected. Are you ready? Lyra looked at him. She touched the side of his face. I am ready to drive. They walked back to the ship, hand in hand. Meanwhile, in the council spire, Cassian Holt stood by the window of his office, looking down at the city he believed he owned. The news screens were playing the loop of his fabricated story. Jace the terrorist, Lyra the hostage. His aide walked in, looking pale. Sir, the aide said, we have lost the signal from the scavenger teams on Oxtrad. All 3 skiffs are offline. Cassian didn't turn around. And the target? Unknown. But we picked up an energy spike in the sector. Massive psionic resonance. Cassian turned. His face was a mask of cold fury. He walked to his desk and placed his hand on a biometric scanner. Initiate the emergency decree, Cassian ordered. Article 99. Sir? The aide stammered. Article 99 is a kill-on-sight order for planetary threats. It requires a unanimous council vote. I have the votes, Cassian said. Brand Lyra Vey a Class A security threat. Biological contagion risk. Mental instability. Order all security forces to capture her. And if she resists, he paused, looking at the hologram of Lyra floating above his desk. If she resists, terminate the threat and bring me the driver's head. The aide nodded and ran to execute the order. Cassian looked back out at the city. Come back, Lyra, he whispered to the glass. Come back and see what happens when you try to leave me. Far above the atmosphere, the black interceptor broke orbit, turning its nose toward Earth. The meter was running, and the final fare was due. Asterline City had changed. It was no longer just a metropolis of neon and noise. It had become a hunting ground. The propaganda was inescapable. It bled from every holographic billboard, every transit screen, and every data pad in the hands of the terrified populace. The image was always the same, a high contrast, manipulated photo of Lyra Vey, her eyes glowing with a sinister, predatory red light she did not possess. Standing over a burning building, alien infiltrator. The text screamed in jagged red letters, wanted for biological terrorism. Beside her, a grainy image of Jace Kieran appeared. The caption was shorter, colder, human handler, traitor, armed and lethal. Lyra pulled the hood of her oversized gray sweatshirt lower, shielding her face from the scanning drone that buzzed past the alley entrance. They were in Sector 6, the industrial heart of the city, where the smog was thick enough to taste like copper and ash. They did a bad job with your nose, Jace whispered, glancing at a flickering poster on the brick wall. They made it look hooked. You have a very straight nose. They are trying to make me look like a monster, Jace, Lyra hissed, keeping her head down. I do not think aesthetic accuracy was their priority. Still, Jace said, moving toward a rusted service door. It is lazy graphic design. I am offended on your behalf. He knocked on the door, a complex rhythmic pattern, 2 fast, 1 slow, 3 fast. The door slid open instantly. A woman in a grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit stood there. She held a heavy wrench, her eyes darting to the street before settling on Jace. Her expression softened from suspicion to profound relief. Boss, she breathed. We heard the news. We thought they had you at the spaceport. Not yet. Sarah, Jace said, ushering Lyra inside. Is the safe house secure? Clean and stocked, Sarah said. She looked at Lyra, then bowed her head, a quick, respectful gesture. Ma'am, my brother works the docks in District 4. He says the patrols are doubling every hour, but the boys are ready. You say the word, and nothing moves in or out of the harbor. Lyra looked at the woman. Sarah was tired, overworked, and clearly frightened. Yet she looked at Jace as if he were the only structure keeping the sky from falling. "Thank you, Sarah," Lyra said. They moved through the back of the mechanic shop into a hidden basement. It was a command center that rivaled the military ops rooms Lyra had seen on the council barge, but built from scavenged tech. Screens displayed live feeds from traffic cameras, police frequencies, and atmospheric sensors. "This is the bloodstream," Jace said, sweeping a hand across the monitors. "The council has cameras. I have people. Street medics, dishwashers, sanitation workers, hackers who work out of basements. They see everything Cassian misses because Cassian doesn't look down." "It is impressive," Lyra admitted. She walked to a terminal and plugged in the memory core they had salvaged from Oxtrad. "But defensive maneuvering is not enough. We are reacting. We need to take control of the board." "How?" Jace asked, leaning over her shoulder. "We cannot broadcast the evidence yet. Cassian has locked the media grid. Any unauthorized transmission gets flagged and traced in 3 seconds. If we broadcast, they pinpoint us." "We do not broadcast the truth yet," Lyra said, her fingers flying over the holographic keys. "We broadcast chaos." She pulled up a schematic of the city's facial recognition grid. "I can use the distortion algorithms from the precursor ruins," Lyra explained. "I can weave them into the surveillance feed. I will not just hide us. I will create 5,000 decoys." She hit execute. On the main screen, the city map lit up with thousands of red dots. "What did you do?" Jace asked. "I gave the tracking software a hallucination," Lyra said, a grim smile touching her lips. "According to Cassian's system, I am currently walking down 5th Avenue, buying noodles in District 9, and dancing in a club in the Spire, simultaneously." Jace stared at the screen, then looked at her with a mixture of shock and admiration. "You just broke the dragnet." "I am learning," Lyra said. "If they want a monster, I will be a ghost." The victory was short-lived. A red alert bar flashed on the central monitor, overriding the map. A video file began to play automatically. It was Cassian. He sat in his office, his hands folded on his desk. He looked calm, reasonable, and utterly terrifying. "Lyra," Cassian said smoothly, "I know you are watching. You are clever. You have evaded my security. But you have forgotten that you are not the only guest on this planet." The camera panned to the side. Lyra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Bound to a chair, looking bruised and terrified, was Ilara, Lyra's junior aide. Ilara was barely an adult by their species' standards, a gentle botanist who had come to Earth to study Terran flora, not to play politics. "Ilara," Lyra whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "She is a charming creature." Cassian continued, stepping into the frame and placing a hand on Ilara's shoulder. Ilara flinched violently. "It seems she was trying to book passage off-world, a violation of the current lockdown. My security team had to intervene." Cassian looked directly into the lens. "You have 6 hours to surrender yourself to the Central Justice Tower. If you do not, I will be forced to transfer your aide to a high-security containment facility for interrogation. I am told the stress of such an environment can be damaging to your physiology." The screen went black. Lyra slammed her fist onto the console, cracking the plastic. "She is innocent. She has nothing to do with this." "He knows that," Jace said, his voice cold steel. "He is proving a point. He is showing you that there is no line he won't cross. He will hurt anyone to get to you." "I have to go," Lyra said, turning toward the door. "I have to surrender." "No," Jace said, stepping in her path. "He will kill her. Jace." "He won't kill her as long as she is leverage," Jace said. "If you surrender, He wins. He gets you. He keeps the power. And he probably disposes of Alara anyway to tie up loose ends. The only way to save her is to break his hold on the city. We need the vault, Lyra said, wiping her face. The evidence vault. The one with the physical copies of the treaty drafts. If we can get the original Guardian Annex document, we can prove premeditated treason before the broadcast goes out. It will give the council members a legal reason to turn on him. The vault is in the oceanic sector, Jace said. Suspended above the water. High security, no back doors. Then we go through the front door, Lyra said. Or rather, the commuter line. Ilazn. The maglev train that ran to the oceanic sector was packed with mid-level bureaucrats and tired service workers. The air smelled of recycled ozone and damp wool. Lyra and Jace stood near the doors, swaying with the motion of the train. They were unrecognizable. Jace wore a pair of thick corrective glasses and a sweater that looked like it had been knitted by a visually impaired grandmother. Lyra wore a wig of frizzy red curls, excessive makeup that obscured her alien features, and a bright yellow raincoat. I still say we are going to be late, Lyra said loudly, her voice pitched to a nasal whine that grated on the ears. My mother warned me about your time management. Harold, she said, Harold is a sweet boy, but he would be late to his own funeral. Jace blinked behind the glasses, suppressing a twitch of his lip. Martha, please. The train is delayed. It is not my fault the infrastructure is crumbling. You always blame the infrastructure. Lyra snapped, throwing her hands up. Just like you blamed the weather for the wedding photos. My hair looked like a wet cat. Harold! A woman standing next to them sighed loudly and moved 2 steps away, clearly annoyed by the domestic dispute. A security drone drifted past, scanned them briefly, registered married couple, low priority, and moved on. Jace leaned in, pretending to fix Lyra's collar. You are enjoying this too much, he whispered, his lips barely moving. I have watched 17 seasons of suburban strife, Lyra whispered back, staying in character. My sarcasm is weaponized. It is terrifying, Jace muttered. Remind me never to make you angry about laundry. Keep your eyes on the sensor, Lyra hissed, then switched back to the wine. And another thing. Why did you buy the lemon-scented detergent? You know I am allergic to synthetic citrus. Jace actually coughed to cover a laugh. It was absurd. It was dangerous. But for a moment, in the middle of a high-stakes infiltration, they were just 2 people playing a game, connected by the secret language of their deception. The train hissed to a halt at the ocean platform. This is us. Martha, Jace said, grabbing her arm a little too firmly. Try not to trip. They stepped out onto the platform. The wind hit them instantly, a roaring gale coming off the dark Atlantic. The ocean platform was a massive rig, a city on stilts, where the council stored its physical archives away from the fires and riots of the mainland. The evidence vault was a separate structure, hanging suspended by magnetic cables 50 meters above the churning black waves. It looked like a steel teardrop. Guard patrols are thermal, Jace said, tapping his glasses, which were actually a heads-up display connected to his network. 2 on the bridge, 3 at the door, drones every 30 seconds. I have the jammer, Lyra said, patting her purse. We have 3 minutes before the shift change, Jace said. Let's go. They moved fast, shedding the bickering couple act. Jace moved with the fluid, predatory grace of the hidden boss, silencing the bridge guards with 2 rapid tranquilizer darts before they could touch their radios. They reached the massive blast door of the vault. It was a smooth slab of black metal with no keyhole, no keypad, and no handle. Just a single glowing crystal embedded in the center. It is a memory lock, Lyra said, staring at it. It requires a psychic resonance key, usually a council member. Can you crack it? Jace asked, watching the rear. I can try to mimic the frequency, Lyra said. She placed her hand on the crystal. She closed her eyes, preparing to cycle through the standard diplomatic resonance patterns she had learned. But before she could even begin the sequence, the crystal pulsed. It turned from red to a welcoming blue. Access granted. Subject Vey. The heavy mechanisms of the door groaned, and the slab slid open. Lyra stood frozen, her hands still hovering in the air. A cold pit opened in her stomach, deeper and darker than the ocean below. Lyra? Jace asked urgently. We are in... Move. It opened for me, Lyra whispered. Jace, I didn't use a code. I just touched it. Jace stopped. He looked at the lock, then at her. That is a biometric memory crystal, Jace said. It is keyed to specific DNA markers. Your DNA. Cassian, Lyra said, the realization making her nauseous. He has been harvesting my data, hair samples, skin cells from the handshake. He keyed the vault to me. Why? Because if the vault is opened, my signature is on the log, Lyra said. He is framing me for the theft before we even commit it. Or... She stepped inside. The vault was lined with physical data slates. She ran to the central podium where the pending treaties were kept. She found the document. The Unity Annex, Draft 4. She scanned the text. Her eyes widened. It is not just a blockade, Lyra said, her voice trembling. Jace, look at this. Section 8. In the interest of planetary security, all alien representatives entering a Unity marriage are subject to indefinite biological guardianship. All offspring, genetic material, and intellectual property become the ward of the human spouse. Slavery, Jace said. Legalized, treaty-bound slavery. He wants to turn your people into a patent farm. He knew I would come here, Lyra said. He wanted me to open this door. He wanted my biological signature on the lock. It is a trap, Jace said, spinning around. Lyra, get out! But the blast door slammed shut before they could move. The lights in the vault turned a blazing, accusatory red. Intruder alert. A mechanical voice boomed. Biometric signature confirmed. Lyra Vey. Containment protocol initiated. He baited the hook with the truth, Jace said, drawing his weapon. Outside, the sound of heavy engines roared over the wind. Through the small viewport, they saw 3 combat gunships rising from beneath the platform. We are surrounded, Jace said. He tapped his earpiece. Network, Code Black, Sector Oceanic. Jace, there are too many of them, Lyra said. The door is sealed. Watch the lights, Jace said, over the comms. Lyra heard Sarah's voice, tinny but fierce. On it, boss. Killing the grid in 3, 2, 1. Suddenly, the entire ocean platform went dark. The external floodlights, the landing pads, the bridge lights, everything died. The only light came from the lightning storm far on the horizon and the glowing red eyes of the gunships. Now! Jace yelled. He fired at the viewport, shattering the reinforced glass. The wind howled into the vault. We jump! Jace shouted over the roar. Into the ocean? Lyra screamed. My team is in the water, submersible extraction. They ran for the shattered window. But as they reached the edge, a containment net, a glowing mesh of hard light energy, sprang up from the floor, separating them. Cassian had anticipated the blackout. The vault had its own independent power source. Jace was on the window side. Lyra was on the door side. Lyra! Jace threw himself against the energy field. It sparked, throwing him back. The blast door behind Lyra hissed open. Standing there were 10 armored soldiers, their weapons trained on her. and behind them a drone projecting Cassian's face. "An elegant attempt," Cassian's voice said. "But I told you I own the board." Lyra looked at Jace. He was getting up, preparing to throw himself at the field again. He would die trying to break through. The soldiers would cut him down. "Run!" Lyra screamed at him. "Jace, jump! Save the evidence!" She held up the data slate she had taken. She threw it through the field. Objects could pass, but biological matter could not. Jace caught the slate. He looked at her, agony in his eyes. "I am not leaving you," he roared. "If you stay, we both lose." Lyra cried, tears streaming down her face. "You are the hidden boss. Be the boss. Save the city. Save Alara. Go!" The soldiers moved in, grabbing Lyra by the arms. "Don't do this!" Jace yelled, slamming his fist against the barrier. Lyra looked at him one last time. "I choose this," she whispered. She turned to the soldiers and surrendered. Jace watched them drag her away. He looked at the slate in his hand. He looked at the gunship circling closer to the window. With a primal scream of rage, he turned and dove out of the shattered window, plummeting into the dark, freezing ocean below. The detention suite was a glass cage suspended in the center of the council's atrium. It was designed for maximum visibility. Everyone who walked through the government building could see the prisoner. Lyra sat on the single white bench in the center of the cell. The walls were soundproof, but she could see the faces of the people passing by. Some looked at her with hate, fueled by the propaganda. Others looked with fear. She felt a strange, numb calm. She had come to Earth thinking she could navigate its politics. She had thought she could marry down to escape power. She had thought anonymity was a shield. She was wrong. Power was not a location. It was a force of gravity. It pulled everything toward it. You could not hide from it in a taxi. You could not hide from it in a marriage. The only difference was the hand that wielded it. Cassian held power like a weapon, a thing to force submission. Jace held power like a shield, a thing to bear the weight of the sky so others didn't have to. The glass wall in front of her shimmered and turned opaque. A screen activated. Cassian stood there. He wasn't in the room. He was too smart to be in the same room as her now. He was broadcasting from his penthouse. "You look comfortable," Cassian said. "The suite is temperature-controlled." "Where is Alara?" Lyra asked. "She is safe, for now," Cassian said. "I have the slate, Lyra. Or rather, I know your husband has it, but it doesn't matter. He is one man against a planet." "He is not one man," Lyra said. "He is a network." "A network I am dismantling," Cassian said. "I have declared martial law. Drones are sweeping the lower districts. We are rooting them out, hole by rat-infested hole. And as for your husband..." Cassian smiled. "I have made him an offer. He surrenders the slate and himself by midnight, or I execute you on live television as a threat to planetary security." Lyra's heart stopped. "He will not come." "He loves you," Cassian said, as if it were a weakness. "He will come, and when he does, I will kill him. And then, my dear, you and I will finally have our wedding." The screen deactivated. The glass became clear again. Lyra sat alone in the silence. It was 10 minutes to midnight. At 5 minutes to midnight, the city held its breath. The streets were empty except for the patrolling drones. The citizens huddled in their apartments, watching the countdown clock on the news feeds. Suddenly, the screens flickered. The countdown vanished. The propaganda posters of Lyra with red eyes dissolved into static. A new signal overrode the broadcast. It wasn't slick. It wasn't polished. It was gritty, coming from a camera that shook slightly. A man sat in a chair, bathed in shadow. He wore a leather jacket that had seen better days. He leaned forward and the light caught his face. It was Jace. He didn't look like a taxi driver. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a king who had just taken off his crown to pick up a sword. "My name is Jace Kieran," he said. His voice was the gravel and steel that Lyra knew. It boomed from every speaker in the city. It echoed in the detention suite. "For 10 years," Jace continued, "I have driven your streets. I have carried your groceries. I have listened to your stories. I have been invisible, because being invisible allowed me to protect you from the monsters who live in the light." He held up the data slate, the one from the vault. "Cassian Holt told you I am a terrorist. He told you my wife is a monster. He lied." Jace tapped the slate. Behind him, on the broadcast, the documents appeared. The drafts of the slavery annex, the video of the bribes, the recording of Vorian's betrayal, the footage of Cassian ordering the hit on the innocent skiffs. "This is the truth," Jace said. "Cassian Holt is selling this city. He is selling your freedom for alien tech. He is turning diplomacy into ownership." Jace looked directly into the camera. Lyra, sitting in her glass cage, felt like he was looking right at her. "He gave me a choice," Jace said. "Surrender, or lose the woman I love." "He thinks love is a lever to be pulled." Jace stood up. "He is right. It is a lever. But he pulled it the wrong way." The camera pulled back. Jace wasn't in a bunker. He was standing on the roof of the Central Justice Tower, directly above where Lyra was being held. The wind whipped his jacket. Behind him, hundreds of armed drones hovered, their lights turning from red, council control, to green, network control. "I am the hidden boss," Jace declared, his voice ringing out across the skyline. "And I am done hiding." "Cassian Holt," Jace said. "You wanted a war? You just got a revolution?" In his penthouse, Cassian watched the screen, his face draining of color. "Sir," his aide screamed. "We have lost control of the drone grid. Someone overrode the command codes." "It is the alien tech," Cassian whispered. "The decoys. They were a backdoor Trojan." He slammed his hand on the desk. "Initiate Protocol 0, Cassian roared. "Martial law, total lockdown. If I cannot control the city, I will burn it." Outside, the sky filled with the sound of metal screaming. The green drones of the network clashed with the remaining black drones of the council. The war for Asterline City had begun, and in her glass cage, Lyra Vey stood up, pressed her hand against the glass, and watched the sky catch fire for her. The war for Asterline City was not fought with ballistics, but with belief. The night sky, usually a void of indifference, had become a chaotic mosaic of conflicting realities. On the massive council screens that dominated the skyline, Cassian Holt's narrative played on a loop. Lyra Vey was a biological terrorist, a contagion in a beautiful dress. Jace Kieran was a radical separatist armed with stolen military hardware. The images were slick, edited with the terrified precision of a regime losing its grip. But down in the streets, on the hacked billboards, on the flickering displays of vending machines, and on the handheld slates of the populace, a different story pulsed. It was the raw, unpolished feed of the network. It showed Jace standing on the roof, not as a terrorist, but as a man tired of the lies. It showed the documents. It showed the truth. Lyra stood in the center of her glass cage in the atrium of the Central Justice Tower. The guards outside were doubled, their weapons drawn, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of fear and duty. They had been told she could melt brains with a glance. Lyra breathed in slowly. The air in the cell was sterile, recycled, and cold. She closed her eyes. She reached into the well of her own mind, tapping into the residual energy of the Oxtrad ruins that still hummed in her blood. She didn't need a crystal to project an illusion. She just needed to be the prism. She focused on the last minute of time, the way the guard on the left blinked, the way the ventilation fan stuttered, the way the light reflected off the glass. Hold it, she commanded her own synapses. Loop it. She opened her eyes. To her, the room looked normal, but to the guards outside, the reality inside the glass cage had just snagged. They saw Lyra sitting on the bench, head bowed, perfectly still. Then they saw her shift slightly. Then they saw her sit still. Then shift. It was a perfect, seamless loop of the last 60 seconds. Lyra stood up. The guards didn't react. They were watching the ghost of a minute ago. She walked to the glass door. It was biometrically sealed, but Lyra had learned a trick or two from the hidden boss. She placed her palm on the panel and pushed a pulse of psionic static into the circuit, a memory of the door being unlocked. The lock clicked. Green light. Lyra stepped out of the cell. She walked right past the captain of the guard, who was staring intently at the empty bench inside the cell, convinced he was still guarding a prisoner. "Keep watching," Lyra whispered as she slipped past him like smoke. "It is the only performance you will get." She reached the service elevator at the back of the atrium, keyed the override code Jace had broadcasted on the private frequency, and ascended. The rooftop garden was a sanctuary of wind and shadows, suspended 80 stories above the riots. It was a place for the elite to sip wine and ignore the world below. But tonight, the wine glasses were shattered on the patio, and the only guest was a man checking the magazine of a kinetic pistol. Jace turned as the elevator doors opened. He looked exhausted. The leather jacket was torn at the shoulder. There was a cut above his eyebrow, and his hands were stained with soot. But when he saw Lyra, the tension that held his body together seemed to snap, replaced by a relief so profound it looked painful. "You got out," Jace said. He didn't sound surprised, just grateful. "I learned from the best," Lyra said, stepping onto the gravel path. The wind whipped her hair across her face. The neon glow from the city below cast them in shades of violent pink and electric blue. They met in the middle of the garden. They didn't embrace immediately. They stood 2 feet apart, breathing hard, looking at each other with the intensity of people who had just realized they might actually survive. "I am sorry," Jace began. "I should have been there to—" "No," Lyra interrupted. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cold, hers were warm. "No apologies. We are done with apologies, and we are done with cages." Jace looked at their joined hands. He squeezed, hard. "No more pretending, Lyra. No more poor taxi driver, and no more helpless diplomat. We finish this as who we are." "And who are we?" Lyra asked. "We are the people who are going to take that tower," Jace said, nodding toward the spire that rose even higher from the center of the complex, the council broadcast node. "Cassian is up there. He is preparing a martial law decree that will turn this city into a prison camp. We have 10 minutes to stop him." "Then we should probably take the stairs," Lyra said, a faint, sharp smile touching her lips. "I hear the elevator is compromised." Jace laughed, a short, rough sound. "I missed your sarcasm. It is my favorite weapon." The climb to the broadcast deck was a nightmare of service shafts and maintenance ladders. The main corridors were flooded with Cassian's elite security forces, so Jace guided them through the veins of the building, the dark, narrow tunnels where the drones hunted. They were halfway up a vertical shaft when the first hunter-killer drone dropped from the darkness above. It was a sleek, black sphere with a single red eye. It shrieked, a digital tearing sound, and charged its laser cannon. "Down!" Jace yelled. He didn't fire his gun. He grabbed a thick power cable running along the wall and severed it with his combat knife. Sparks showered down like fireworks. He thrust the live wire at the drone. Crack! The drone spasmed as thousands of volts fried its circuitry. It dropped past them, crashing into the darkness below. "That was reckless," Lyra shouted over the alarm klaxons. "That was engineering," Jace grunted, pulling her up the next rung. "We are close. The broadcast deck is through this hatch." They reached the top. Jace placed a small breaching charge on the hinges of the blast door. "On 3, Jace said. "Cassian will be guarded. Stay behind me. Use the memory light. The cameras in that room are live. Whatever you project, the whole planet sees." "I am ready," Lyra said. She touched the pocket where she kept the data crystal from the ruins. It felt hot, vibrating with the weight of the truth it held. 1, Jace counted. 2, boom! The door blew inward. Smoke filled the corridor. Jace surged through the gap, his pistol raised. "Network! Secure the room!" From the other side of the room, the ventilation ducts, 3 network operatives dropped in, laying down suppression fire with stun rounds. Jace had coordinated the breach perfectly. Cassian's guards were overwhelmed in seconds. They were mercenaries, paid to fight, not to die. When they saw the hidden boss and his team, they dropped their weapons. But Cassian was not a mercenary. He stood at the central console, bathed in the white light of the broadcast emitters. He was alone, but he didn't look defeated. He looked manic. He held a detonator in one hand. "Stop!" Cassian screamed. "One step closer, and I blow the support columns. I will drop this tower into the ocean before I let you take it." Jace froze. He signaled his team to hold fire. The room was silent except for the hum of the servers. The cameras were rolling. The red on-air light was blazing. "You have lost Cassian," Jace said, his voice calm, leveled. "Look at the screens. The city isn't listening to you anymore. They will listen when I restore order." Cassian spat. He looked at Lyra, his eyes wild. "And you ungrateful creature, I offered you a kingdom. I offered you protection." Lyra stepped out from behind Jace. She walked toward the cameras. She didn't look at Cassian. She looked at the lens, at the millions of people watching. "You offered me a cage," Lyra said. Her voice was clear, magnified by the room's acoustics. "You offered me silence." She pulled the crystal from her pocket. "But I do not want silence." She slammed the crystal into the master port of the broadcast console. Amplification online. The room dissolved. It wasn't just a video on a screen anymore. The memory light flooded the tower, fed by the massive power of the broadcast array. It expanded outward, a wave of psionic energy that rolled over Asterline City like a tsunami of truth. In living rooms, in bars, in the streets, people didn't just see the corruption, they felt it. They felt the cold, slimy greed of the council members taking the bribes. They felt the terror of the innocent skiff pilots as Cassian ordered them shot down. They felt the betrayal Vorian felt when he sold out Lyra. And they felt Cassian's own private contempt for the citizens he claimed to lead. The air over the city filled with giant, ghostly holograms. Cassian's voice, stripped of all charm, boomed from the clouds. "The alien woman is property. The citizens are cattle. We will rewrite the treaty and own them all." Cassian staggered back, clutching his head. "Turn it off. It is a trick. It is a fabrication." But it wasn't a trick. It was visceral. It was the raw emotional imprint of reality. You could lie with words. You could lie with video. You could not lie with memory. Then, the twist happened. The memory light wave hit the city's streetlights. the ones rigged with Cassian's suggestion tech. The tech was designed to broadcast a subtle frequency of compliance, powered by stolen alien crystals. But Lyra's memory light was too strong. It acted as a feedback loop. Pop, 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 all over the city. The suggestion nodes overloaded, streetlights shattered. The subtle hum that had been pressing down on the minds of the citizens for years suddenly snapped. In the council chamber across town, officials blinked, looking around as if waking from a long, drugged sleep. The artificial compliance shattered, leaving them suddenly, terrifyingly aware of what they had agreed to. The spell broke. In the broadcast tower, Cassian fell to his knees. The detonator slipped from his hand, clattering harmlessly to the floor. He stared at the giant hologram of himself looming over the city, speaking words of treason. "It is over," Lyra said. Cassian looked up, his face twisted. He lunged for a concealed drawer in the console. "If I go down, you burn with me," he shrieked, pulling out a heavy blaster. Jace was faster. He didn't shoot Cassian. He stepped forward, deflected Cassian's aim with a sharp upward strike of his forearm, and drove a fist into Cassian's solar plexus. Cassian folded. Jace spun him around, kicking his legs out, and slammed him face first onto the floor. He placed the barrel of his pistol against the back of Cassian's head. "Give me a reason," Jace whispered. "Please, give me one reason." Cassian wheezed, blood dripping from his nose. "Do it. Kill me. Make yourself the murderer they say you are. Prove me right." The room held its breath. Lyra watched Jace. His finger was tightening on the trigger. The anger in him was a living thing, years of hiding, years of watching men like Cassian hurt the city he loved. "Jace," Lyra said softly. Jace froze. "He wants you to be the monster," Lyra said. "Don't give him the satisfaction." Jace closed his eyes for a second. He exhaled a long, shaky breath. He pulled the gun away. "You are not worth the bullet," Jace said. He grabbed Cassian by the collar and hauled him up. He shoved him toward the cameras. "Look at them," Jace commanded, forcing Cassian to face the lens. "Look at the people you tried to sell. You are under arrest, Cassian, citizen's arrest, and you are going to stand trial in front of every single one of them." Cassian sagged, defeated not by violence, but by the absolute weight of his own exposure. Lyra stepped up to the microphone. The feedback from the city was deafening. Cheers, sirens, the sound of 1,000,000 people waking up. She looked into the camera. She looked at Cassian, who was being cuffed by the network team. "You told me that wealth was the only power that mattered," Lyra said, her voice steady. "You told me I had to choose between being a victim or a trophy." She paused, letting the words settle. "But I found a third option. To avoid a rich human, I married a poor taxi driver, unaware he is the hidden boss." She turned to Jace, who was watching her with a look of undisguised pride. "And he still asked my consent when you only ever asked for ownership." The sun was rising over Asterline City. It was a messy dawn. Smoke still drifted from the riots, and the streets were littered with debris. But the light was clean. The suggestion fog was gone. Lyra sat on the hood of the yellow taxi, parked on the edge of the sky bridge overlooking the harbor. Jace stood next to her, leaning against the door, drinking coffee from a paper cup. The treaty negotiations had been swift, with the council fractured and the public demanding blood. The remaining officials had capitulated live on air. Lyra had dictated the terms herself. No marriage-based guardianship, no biometric harvesting, full independent oversight of all council technology, led by a committee of humans and aliens, and immediate medical aid to her homeworld, with no strings attached. "You were terrifying in there," Jace said. taking a sip of coffee. I think the trade secretary actually wet himself when you brought up the embargo clauses. I was merely being firm, Lyra said, stretching her legs. Diplomacy requires a certain level of theatricality. Theatricality, Jace scoffed. You threatened to deorbit their satellite grid. It was a bluff, Lyra smiled. Mostly. Jace shook his head, laughing softly. He looked at her. The adrenaline of the night had faded, leaving behind a quiet intimacy that felt new and fragile. So, Jace said, the contract, the marriage. We accomplished the mission. Cassian is in a cell. The treaty is signed. Technically, the deal is done. He looked down at his boots. You can annul it, walk away, go back to the spire. No hard feelings. Lyra looked at him. She looked at the scuff marks on his jacket, the tired lines around his eyes, and the way his hands were still shaking slightly from the aftermath of the fight. She thought about the spire, the cold, sterile rooms, the polite conversations, the safety. Then she thought about the noodle shop, the glowing lizard, the way Jace drove through the rain, the way he had held her in the ruins of Oxtrad and told her she wasn't alone. I have a problem with the annulment, Lyra said. Jace looked up, his expression guarded. Oh? The paperwork? No, Lyra said. The premise. She slid off the hood of the car. She stepped into his space, invading it the way he had never invaded hers. She reached out and grabbed the lapels of his ruined jacket. The premise was that I was running away, Lyra said. I am done running. She pulled him in. He didn't resist this time. He dropped the coffee cup. His arms went around her, pulling her close, burying his face in the crook of her neck. Lyra, he breathed against her skin. Shut up and kiss me, taxi driver, she whispered. He did. It wasn't a movie kiss. It was messy, tasting of coffee and smoke and exhaustion. But it was real. It felt like an anchor dropping in a storm. Lyra laughed against his lips, tears prickling her eyes at the absurdity of it, that she had traveled across the galaxy to find love in a beat-up cab with a cracked dashboard. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting against each other. So, Jace said, his voice husky. Does this mean I have to keep the lizard neighbor? It means we have to buy him a new curtain, Lyra said. Fair enough. Jace opened the passenger door for her. Where to, Mrs. Kieran? Lyra looked at the open door. Then she looked at the driver's seat. Actually, Lyra said, walking around the car, I think I will drive today. Jace raised an eyebrow. You don't have a license. I have diplomatic immunity, Lyra grinned, opening the driver's door. And I know the boss, Jace laughed, a full, free sound that echoed off the skyscrapers. He walked around and got into the passenger seat. Lyra gripped the wheel. It felt solid. She started the engine. The meter flickered to life, the red numbers glowing, 0.00. She pulled the taxi out onto the highway. The road ahead was wide open. The drones were gone. The banners of unity were being torn down to make room for something new. She looked at Jace. He reached over and took her hand, interlacing their fingers on the gear shift. Ready? He asked. Always, Lyra said. She hit the gas. The taxi surged forward, not escaping, not hiding, but driving straight into the morning. The meter ticked like a heartbeat, counting not the cost of the journey but the value of the choice.